When I first began my journey, I thought success was something mysterious, reserved for those born with extraordinary talents or lucky breaks. But as I struggled, as I observed, and as I learned from my mentor, I realized that success is not about giant leaps, nor is it about striking gold in one single event. It's built quietly, brick by brick, through small, consistent disciplines practiced every single day. Think about it. One day of saving $1 means nothing. One day of reading 10 pages feels insignificant. One day of making that extra phone call might not change your life. But string those days together, 30 days, 60 days, 365 days, and suddenly the difference is remarkable. You don't see the change immediately, but with discipline, the invisible compounding begins to work its magic. I remember when my mentor asked me if I had ever saved even 10 cents out of $1. At the time, I had to admit, no, I hadn't. That single question changed the way I saw money. It wasn't about having a lot to begin with. It was about developing the discipline to manage even a little. Saving 10 cents out of $1 didn't make me rich overnight, but it was the beginning of building the muscle of consistency. And that changed everything. It taught me that success is not one massive achievement, but the quiet accumulation of daily choices. Wealth, health, wisdom, they are all products of what you do in the small moments that no one sees. Most people underestimate the power of these simple disciplines. They tell themselves they'll start when they have more money, or more time, or more opportunities. But that day never comes because they are waiting for the extraordinary while ignoring the ordinary steps that actually build extraordinary results. Eating an apple a day doesn't seem like it will change your life, but neglecting it daily eventually does. Reading for 15 minutes might not make you a scholar tonight, but neglecting learning over years leaves you vulnerable and stagnant. What separates those who succeed from those who don't is not intelligence or luck, it's discipline. The poor disciplines themselves with entertainment. The wealthy discipline themselves with education. The poor discipline themselves with excuses. The wealthy discipline themselves with action. The difference is invisible at first, but over years, it becomes impossible to ignore. And the best part, anyone can do it. You don't need to be special to practice a small discipline each day. You just need the decision to start. So if you truly desire wealth and success, don't wait for the big moment. Don't wait for the miracle. Begin today with the smallest of actions. Save a little, learn a little, do a little. And when you repeat that, day after day, you'll look back and realize it wasn't luck, it wasn't a secret, it was simply discipline. When I was a young man, I believed I needed to know everything before I could begin. I thought the secret to success was first to become an expert, then to finally step into the arena. But life taught me quickly that this approach was nothing but a clever disguise for procrastination. If you wait until you're fully ready, until you've mastered every detail, you'll be waiting forever. The truth is, you learn best not in theory, but in practice. Not by standing on the sidelines, but by stepping into the game. And the beauty of this principle is that you don't have to choose between learning and earning. You can do both at the same time. When I first started in business, I didn't have all the answers. In fact, I had very few. But what I did have was a willingness to try. I attended meetings, I listened, I asked questions, and most importantly, I applied what I learned immediately. Sometimes I succeeded, other times I stumbled, but even the failures became tuition I paid to the school of experience. Each mistake taught me more than a book ever could. And while I was learning, I was also earning, maybe not a fortune at first, but enough to keep me moving forward. That's the key. The progress wasn't in waiting for perfection, it was in taking imperfect action. Many people paralyze themselves with the fear of not knowing enough. They say, once I finish this course, once I read these books, once I get certified, then I'll begin. But by the time they finish preparing, someone else who dared to start earlier has already gained experience, developed confidence, and created momentum. The lesson is simple. You don't need to be great to start, but you must start to be great. Think of it this way. A farmer doesn't wait until he's studied agriculture for 20 years before planting his first seed. He plants, he waters, he observes, and he learns season by season. Each harvest teaches him something new. And because he acted, he not only learns, but he eats. That's how life works. You learn in the process of doing, not by avoiding the field. So don't underestimate the power of starting now. Offer the best you can with the knowledge you have today, then refine as you go. The world rewards action, not hesitation. You'll learn while you learn, and as you grow, so will the value you bring. And remember, progress has never been built on perfection. It has always been built on movement. When I was a young man working in a department store, I thought my job was the answer to everything. I put in the hours, I worked hard, and I believed that if I just stayed faithful to the paycheck, somehow life would take care of itself. But I learned the hard way that wages alone will never create freedom. A job will make you a living, but it will never make you rich. And that's when I discovered a principle that changed the course of my life forever. Work full-time on your job, but part-time on your fortune. See, your job gives you security. It pays the bills. It puts food on the table. And that's important. You must take care of your responsibilities. But if you stop there, you're building your entire future on the hopes of someone else's enterprise. You're trading your time for money. And when the time stops, so does the income. What gives you freedom is building something of your own. That's why I say work full-time at your job, but then invest your evenings, your weekends, your spare moments into building a fortune. It doesn't have to be grand at first. It could be selling a product, creating a service, teaching what you know, or turning a skill into a business. The key is that you start. I remember when I was introduced to the idea of entrepreneurship. I didn't have capital. I didn't have experience, but I did have desire. So I started small. I read, I studied, I asked questions, and I took action. At first the profits were tiny, almost laughable compared to my wages. But I understood something vital. Wages will feed you, but profits will free you. And I stayed with it. Those small profits began to grow, and with them grew my confidence, my knowledge, and my ability to create. Eventually, what began as part-time overtook my full-time, and that was the beginning of financial independence. Now, some people say, I don't have the time. But the truth is, we all have time, we just spend it differently. Hours lost in front of the television, hours wasted in idle talk, hours spent waiting for something to change. Those hours could be invested in creating a future that works even when you're not working. That's the essence of wealth. Systems, products, businesses, and investments that earn while you sleep. So don't despise your job. Honor it. Do it well. Let it provide for your present. But don't stop there. Use the part-time to build your fortune. One day, your job may no longer be necessary, but your fortune will continue to serve you. And that is the difference between just making a living and truly building a life. When I first started out, I used to say things like, I just want to do better. I want to make more money. I want to be successful. And while those words sounded good, they didn't do me much good. You know why? Because vague goals create vague results. Saying I want to be rich is like telling the captain of a ship, just sail somewhere out there. Without a destination, you drift, And drifting doesn't build fortunes. It only wastes years. The turning point in my life came when I began to set clear financial targets. Not wishes, not dreams floating in the air, but precise, measurable goals tied to specific actions. Instead of saying, I want to save money, I learned to say, I will save $500 every month starting this month. Instead of saying, I want to earn more, I would say, by the end of this year, I will increase my income by $20,000 by launching this product. That kind of clarity activates something powerful inside of you. It forces you to think differently, to plan differently, and most importantly, to act differently. When you define the target, your mind begins searching for the path, and soon, opportunities that once went unnoticed begin to appear because now you're aiming with intention. I remember writing down my first serious financial goal. At the time, it seemed far beyond my reach, but I wrote it anyway. A specific income level by a specific date. I broke it down into monthly steps, then weekly steps, and then into the daily disciplines that would move me toward it. Some days the progress was tiny, making one phone call, reading one chapter, saving just a little bit, but each small action was a brick laid on the foundation of that goal. Slowly, the impossible began to look possible, and eventually it became inevitable. That's the power of precision. Most people never build wealth because they never give their mind a clear command. They live with general hopes, and general hopes are powerless. But when you tie your vision to a number, to a deadline, and to a reason why, you ignite a fire that vague wishing can never produce. The wealthy don't say, someday. They say, by this date, I will achieve this outcome. And then they back it with daily effort. So, if you want your future to change, start by writing it down in detail. Don't let your goals float in the air. Bring them down to earth with numbers, dates, and actions. Because without a target, you will drift. But with a target, every step has direction, every effort has meaning, and every day moves you closer to the life you were meant to build. When I was young and broke, I used to think, if only I had more money, everything would be different. If only I made 10 times what I earn now, then I'd finally be able to save, invest, and live wisely. But here's what life taught me. It doesn't work that way. Money doesn't suddenly make you disciplined. It doesn't change your habits. It magnifies them. If you're careless with $1, you'll be careless with 1,000. If you waste 10, you'll waste 10,000. The truth is, wealth begins with learning to handle the little you already have. If you can't respect the small amounts, you'll never graduate to the big amounts. I remember my mentor once asked me, how much are you saving right now? I told him, nothing. But when I earn more, I'll start. He shook his head and said, if you won't save a dime out of $1, you won't save 100 out of 1,000. That stung, but it was true. So I began with what seemed almost laughable, saving a single dollar out of every 10 I earned. At first it felt insignificant, but it wasn't about the amount. It was about the discipline. It was about teaching myself to respect every dollar, no matter how small. Over time, that $1 became 10, then 100, and eventually thousands. But it all started with proving to myself that I could be trusted with the little things. Wealthy people don't see money as loose change to be tossed away. They see every dollar as a worker on their team. And the question is, are you sending your workers out to build more wealth, or are you wasting them on things you won't even remember tomorrow? Tracking where your money goes is one of the simplest yet most powerful habits you can build. When you see clearly how you spend, you begin to make better decisions. That clarity creates control, and control builds confidence. The poor often wait for a windfall, hoping that more money will solve their problems. But without discipline, more money only multiplies the same mistakes. The wealthy know that stewardship, managing well what you already have, is the real test. Pass the test with small money, and larger sums will naturally follow. Fail it, and no amount of income will ever be enough. So don't despise the small beginnings. Start today by respecting the next dollar that passes through your hands. Save a portion, invest a portion, track every expense, and treat every cent as a seed. Because if you can handle the little with wisdom, the bigger harvest will surely come. When I was just starting out, I found myself naturally drawn to the easy crowd. You know the type. People who don't demand much of you, who let you stay comfortable, who never question your habits or push you to grow. At first it feels good to be around them because there's no pressure. You can relax, joke, complain a little, and no one calls you higher. But here's the truth I discovered. The easy road costs you the most in the long run. Comfort now always demands a heavy price later. If you want to change your future, you've got to resist the pull of ease and go where the demands are high. The places where the demands are high may not feel pleasant at first. They challenge your thinking, stretch your discipline, and make you uncomfortable. But that's exactly where growth happens. When I began surrounding myself with people who were achieving more than me, who expected more of themselves, something inside me began to shift. At first it was intimidating. I felt behind, unworthy, even embarrassed. But gradually, I realized that discomfort was the best teacher. By being in their presence, I absorbed their standards, their habits, their conversations. I learned that if you want to change your results, you've got to change the company you keep. Growth is never found in the easy crowd. It's found just beyond your comfort zone. In those moments when you're tempted to quit, but choose instead to press forward. I remember the first time I accepted a responsibility that felt far bigger than me. I was scared, but I said yes. And that single decision forced me to grow skills I didn't know I had. Responsibility has a way of calling forth potential that comfort never will. The wealthy understand this principle deeply. They don't chase ease, they chase growth. They know that higher demands lead to higher rewards. They seek out mentors who challenge them, industries that stretch them, and opportunities that require their very best. Meanwhile, the poor and the middle class often stay in the easy crowd, telling themselves they're avoiding stress, when in reality, they're avoiding growth. So if you truly want to change your life, don't ask, where is it easy? Ask, where are the demands high? Because that's where your character is forged, your skills are sharpened, and your potential is unlocked. Remember, comfort is where dreams go to die, but challenge is where the future is born. When I was younger and broke, I used to tell myself, I'll give when I have more. I'll help others when my pockets are full and when I can afford it. But that day never seemed to come. The truth is, if you can't give when you have little, you won't give when you have a lot. Giving isn't about the amount, it's about the heart, the mindset, and the belief that there's more than enough to go around. It's about training yourself to live in abundance rather than scarcity. I remember the first time I decided to give when I really didn't feel I could afford it. I had $10, and I chose to part with $1. To most people, that looked insignificant, maybe even foolish. But to me, it was a shift. That single act was saying, I'm not owned by money, I own it. And if I can release a portion, I'm proving to myself that I believe more will come. And it did. That $1 set a pattern in my life. Every time I earned, I gave a piece. As my income grew, so did my giving. Soon, it wasn't just $1 out of 10, but hundreds out of thousands, and eventually more than I ever imagined I'd be capable of giving. You see, giving breaks the grip of fear. Scarcity whispers, hold on tight. You might not have enough tomorrow. But generosity declares, there will always be enough because I'm living in flow, not in fear. The wealthy understand this principle well. They give strategically, joyfully, and consistently, not because they're careless with money, but because they know money is a tool. And when money flows through your hands to bless others, it finds its way back to you multiplied. People often think giving is about charity alone, but it's bigger than that. It sets the tone for how you treat money in every area of life. If you can discipline yourself to release part of what you earn, you're also disciplining yourself not to consume everything, not to spend recklessly, and not to live for the moment. Giving builds margin, it builds faith, and it builds character. So don't wait until you have more. Start with the little you have today. If it's $10, give $1. If it's 100, give 10. Because the discipline of generosity now prepares you for the abundance that's coming later. And when it arrives, you'll be ready not just to receive, but to release. That's the real secret to living in abundance. When I first heard about compounding, it was explained to me in terms of money. Take a small amount, invest it, and let time do its work. $1 today, left to grow, becomes 10, then 100, then more. That lesson alone was powerful enough to change my financial future. But as I walked through life, I discovered something even more profound. Compounding isn't just about money. It's about everything. Your habits, your skills, your relationships, your personal growth. What you do daily, consistently, builds upon itself until one day the results seem almost miraculous. Think of it this way. If you improve yourself by just 1% each day, it doesn't feel like much. 1% is hardly noticeable. But over a year, that small effort multiplies into exponential growth. I remember when I first started reading regularly. At the beginning, I could hardly get through a book. It felt slow, even boring. But I stayed with it, reading a little each day. Months later, I realized I was finishing book after book, filling my mind with ideas and strategies that shape my future. That's compounding in action, not dramatic leaps, but steady, faithful steps that accumulate into something powerful. The same is true for relationships. One thoughtful gesture today might seem small, but repeated consistently, it builds trust, loyalty, and deep bonds. Neglect, on the other hand, also compounds. A missed call today, a forgotten promise tomorrow, over time, these little lapses can erode even the strongest relationship. Compounding works both ways. It magnifies discipline just as it magnifies neglect. Financially, this principle is one of the wealthiest person's greatest allies. Those who start investing early, even with small amounts, often outperform those who wait until they have enough to begin. I've seen people put aside modest sums consistently, and decades later, they're living with freedom and abundance, while others who earned more but delayed are still struggling. Time is the most powerful partner you'll ever have, but it only works if you start. This is why I tell people, don't despise small beginnings. Don't dismiss a few dollars saved, a few minutes of study, a single act of kindness. These are the seeds of compounding. Plant them faithfully, water them daily, and give them time. Before long, the harvest will astonish you. So remember, compounding is the quiet force of wealth and wisdom. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, but it rewards those who are patient, disciplined, and willing to start small. Whether in your finances, your growth, or your relationships, time will magnify what you sow. Make sure you're sowing what you'll be proud to reap. Discipline is never easy. It asks you to give up comfort in the moment for something greater in the future. It asks you to say no when everyone else is saying yes, to delay gratification when it would be easier to indulge, to wake up early when your body begs you to sleep. Saving isn't glamorous. Studying every day isn't exciting. Practicing discipline rarely gets applause. But here's what I've discovered. The pain of discipline weighs ounces, while the pain of regret weighs tons. One can be carried with pride, the other drags you down for a lifetime. I remember early in my career, I was given a choice. Spend my paycheck on the latest comforts, or put a portion aside for the future. At first, it seemed harmless to indulge a little here and there, until I saw the trap. People around me spent everything they earned, living for the moment. Years later, they were still stuck in the same place, while those who bore the pain of discipline, saving, learning, sacrificing, were free, building businesses, traveling the world, enjoying options the others couldn't even consider. Regret is cruel because it comes when the window of opportunity has already closed. You don't get the years back that you wasted. You don't get another chance at the time you let slip away. I've spoken to many people who said, if only I had started earlier, if only I had read that book, taken that chance, built that habit. The word "if only" is the anthem of regret. And let me tell you, it is far heavier to carry than the small inconveniences of discipline. Discipline, on the other hand, creates freedom. The small pain you endure today, saying no to unnecessary spending, turning off the television to read, pushing yourself to exercise, turns into confidence, strength, and opportunity tomorrow. Discipline builds character, and character builds destiny. The man or woman who chooses discipline each day lays a foundation that regret can never touch. So when faced with the choice, comfort now or growth later, remember the price. Yes, discipline has a price, but it is an investment. Regret also has a price, but it is a debt you can never repay. Choose wisely. In the end, life will ask you to pay one way or the other. You'll either pay with discipline or you'll pay with regret. The choice is yours, and the difference is everything. One of the most practical lessons I ever learned about money was this: wealth hides from the unaware. If you don't know where your money's going, you'll always wonder why it disappears so quickly. If you don't measure, you can't manage. And if you can't manage, you can't grow. That's why keeping records isn't just for accountants or big corporations. It's for anyone who wants to take control of their financial destiny. I still remember the first time I was challenged to write down every dollar I spent for 30 days. At first, it felt tedious. Why track something so small? But by the end of that month, I saw a shocking picture. Little expenses I'd barely noticed were adding up to large sums. A few unnecessary coffees, an impulse purchase, small leaks here and there. They were draining money that could have been saved, invested, or used for something meaningful. That exercise taught me that awareness creates clarity, and clarity creates control. The wealthy treat every dollar like an employee. Each one has a job, whether it's to cover necessities, to grow in an investment, or to multiply in a business venture. But you can't assign jobs to your dollars if you don't even know where they're working, or if they're working at all. Without records, money slips through your fingers. With records, you see patterns, you identify leaks, and you gain the power to redirect your resources toward building wealth instead of wasting it. This isn't just about expenses. Keep records of your income, your savings, your investments, even your net worth. Watching those numbers move, up or down, gives you valuable feedback. If they're growing, it means your system is working. If they're shrinking, it's time to adjust. Ignorance might feel comfortable in the short term because it allows you to avoid hard truths. But in the long term, ignorance is expensive. Awareness may sting at first, but it sets you free. I often tell people, don't be casual with money. Casualness creates casualties. Treat your finances with the same seriousness you would treat your health. Just as a doctor checks vital signs to understand the state of your body, your financial records are the vital signs of your economic life. Ignore them, and you risk financial illness. Track them, and you can stay financially fit. Remember, wealth doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives by intention. And intention begins with awareness. Keep records, study them, learn from them, and let them guide your decisions. If you stay aware, wealth won't be able to hide from you. It will come find you because you've created a place where it knows it belongs. When most people hear the word wealth, they picture cars, houses, luxury, and status. But let me tell you, that's not real wealth. That's just decoration. True wealth has little to do with the things you can buy and everything to do with the freedom you can create. Money is only a tool, nothing more, nothing less. It's not the end goal. It's the vehicle that takes you to the destination you truly want. Freedom. I've seen people earn enormous sums of money, yet they remain prisoners, trapped by debt, trapped by obligations, trapped by the constant chase for more. They bought the lifestyle, but they never built the life. What good is a mansion if you never have the time to enjoy it? What good is a luxury car if you're driving it to a job you hate every morning? Wealth, in its highest form, is measured not in dollars, but in freedom, time freedom, location freedom. Time freedom means you own your hours. You're not trading every day of your life for a paycheck. You have systems, assets, and investments working for you so you can choose how to spend your time. Whether it's working on projects you love, traveling, or simply being with your family, time freedom is one of the greatest rewards money can buy. Location freedom means you're not bound to a desk, a city, or a single way of living. It's the ability to move, to choose your environment, to design your life around your values rather than being tied to a place out of necessity. I'll never forget the first time I could decide, not based on obligation, but preference, where I wanted to live and work. That was when I knew money had done its real job. It gave me choice. And then there's peace of mind. This one may be the most valuable of all. To lay your head down at night without fear of bills piling up, without anxiety about emergencies, without that constant knot in your stomach, that's freedom. Peace of mind doesn't come from a flashy purchase. It comes from knowing you've built a financial foundation strong enough to weather storms. So let me remind you, don't pursue money for the sake of money. Pursue it for what it can create. Use money to build a life, not just a lifestyle. The clothes, the cars, the houses, they can be wonderful rewards, but they're not the purpose. The purpose is freedom. And once you taste true freedom, you'll realize that's what wealth was meant for all along. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that gratitude and ambition must walk hand in hand. Too often, people think they have to choose, either settle for what they have and give up on what they want, or pursue more while resenting where they are. But the truth is, the secret is in balance. Be grateful for what you have while pursuing what you want. Gratitude doesn't mean you stop growing, and ambition doesn't mean you stop appreciating. You need both. I remember when I was just starting out. I didn't have much, certainly not the resources I have now, but I learned to bless those small beginnings instead of cursing them. I would look at my modest circumstances and say, I'm thankful for this, but I know it's not the end of the story. That attitude changed everything. Because when you complain about what you don't have, you close the door to more. But when you honor what you do have, no matter how small, you open the door for growth. Gratitude creates an energy that attracts more opportunities. If you're thankful for a little, you'll be trusted with more. Think about it. If someone gave you a small gift and you didn't appreciate it, would they feel motivated to give you more? Of course not. But if you showed appreciation, that person would gladly bless you again. Life works the same way. Gratitude is the soil where abundance grows. At the same time, gratitude should never be an excuse for complacency. You don't say, "I'm thankful for what I have, so I'll stop reaching." No. You say, "I'm thankful for what I have, and because of that gratitude, I'm motivated to build on it." Gratitude fuels ambition. It keeps your heart from growing bitter during the pursuit. It keeps you patient while you plant seeds and wait for the harvest. And it keeps you humble when the rewards finally come.